Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and thy blessed beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good evening, everyone, and namaste. Welcome to our Wednesday evening reading and discussion of Bhagavad Gita. We're well along in the book. Swayam will tell us where we are. She's our beloved reader for this evening. But before we begin, is there anything from our past sessions that has left a question in your mind or a concern that needs clarification, or anything that you would like to comment about what you've heard and we've discussed so far? Anything at all from anyone? All right, dears. Well, thank you for coming this evening. And so Swayam will begin.
Namaste, everybody. We are still on chapter 7, knowledge and experience. And we left somewhere between page 88 and 89 of this translation. I'm going to begin from the top of page 88, so that again we'll have some continuity. That's okay with everybody. Among those who are purified by their good deeds, there are 4 kinds of men who worship me: the world weary, the seeker for knowledge, the seeker for happiness, and the man of spiritual discrimination. The man of discrimination is the highest of these. He is continually united with me. He devotes himself to me always and to no other, for I am very dear to that man, and he is dear to me. Certainly, all these are noble, but the man of discrimination I see as my very self, for he alone loves me because I am myself, the last and only goal of his devoted heart. Through many a long life, his discrimination ripens. He makes me his refuge, knows that Brahman is all. How rare are such great ones! Men whose discrimination has been blunted by worldly desires establish this or that ritual or cult and resort to various deities according to the impulse of their inborn natures. But it does not matter what deity a devotee chooses to worship. If he has faith, I make his faith unwavering.
Now, let's hear that, just that last again. This is Sri Krishna saying, it really does not matter how you seek God. If you are seeking God earnestly and sincerely, I'll get behind it and make it happen. This is what he's telling us. What a supreme promise. So we don't have to be of some particular denomination or have some particular way of doing things that is established through the ages, or even that which has been established by Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda, although there's no doubt that that's terrifically auspicious. But Sri Krishna is saying, whatever way you worship, if it is earnest and sincere and is seeking me and me alone, I will make it happen. So please read those lines again, Swayam.
Sure.
And let us hear this supreme promise for what it is. The promise of the avatar, the promise of the incarnation of God that can make anything happen.
It does not matter what deity a devotee chooses to worship. If he has faith, I make his faith unwavering. Endowed with the faith I give him, he worships that deity and gets from it everything he prays for. In reality, I alone am the giver. But these men of small understanding only pray for what is transient and perishable. The worshippers of the Devas will go to the Devas. So also my devotees will come to me. Thus think the ignorant, that I, the unmanifest, am become man. They do not know my nature, that is one with Brahman, changeless, superhuman. Veiled in my Maya, I am not shown to many. How shall this world, bewildered by delusion, recognize me, who am not born and change not? I know all beings, Arjuna, past, present, and to come, but no one knows me. All living creatures are led astray as soon as they are born by the delusion that this relative world is real. This delusion arises from their own desire and hatred. But the doer of good deeds, whose bad karma is exhausted, are freed from this delusion about the relative world. They hold.
Let's pause right there. I know there's more, but let's pause right there, because this is so important. Is there any comment you'd like to make from your own wisdom or experience about this? Or is there any concern or question that this raises for you, what's been said, that you would like to have clarified? All right, wonderful. Okay, if everybody's clear on what it is that Sri Krishna is saying and promising, then we can go forward with confidence. So read the last few lines again, Smayam, and then read into what comes next.
All living creatures are led astray as soon as they are born by the delusion that this relative world is real. This delusion arises from their own desire and hatred. But the doer of good deeds, whose bad karma is exhausted, are freed from this delusion about the relative world. They hold firmly to their vows and worship me. So, Brother Shankar, I do have a question actually.
Yes, dear.
So, one question is that he says in this delusion arises from their own desire and hatred. So, what is he referring to by that hatred?
Well, our attraction, our desire, and our aversion. Most people's aversions are really take the form of a kind of hatred. We have mild aversions as well, but we hate that which is unpleasant, even though it is what is best for us, as Holy Mother says. And we learn the most from that which is troubling to us. We tend to hate it. And so this is what he means: desire, that is attraction, and hatred, aversion. And so the strong aversions tend to run into hatred. That's what he means.
In the next sentence too, he says, but the doer of good deeds whose bad karma is exhausted are freed from this delusion about the relative world. But doesn't good deed also tie one up in the samsara?
Well, this is the gift of the avatar. When you have exhausted your bad karma, the avatar can then give you liberation, free you from the delusion of the relative world. You do not do it yourself. It is not within your power. It is not within the power of the mind. It is within the power of the heart to desire it, to earnestly desire it. And this is the highest form of spiritual desire: to be free, to be truly happy, to be truly blissful. Well, now remember that the Gita is primarily a lesson in karma yoga. So when he says the doer of good deeds, he's talking about the karma yogi that has lived according to the teachings that he gave us in chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6 about the nature of karma yoga and how to live sacramentally and make everything into a good deed by offering it, everything into a good deed by offering it to the divine. And so the bad karma is very quickly exhausted. But this is, again, please understand, this is not something that you do. There is only one doer. Over and over, Krishna tells us there's only one doer. It is him, that is to say, that divine being acting within time, space, and causation. So does that answer the questions for you?
Yes, Brother Shankara, it sure does.
Anything else from anyone as a follow-up or about any other topic? All right, dears, we're doing well.
Men take refuge in me to escape from their fear of old age and death. Thus, they come to know Brahman and the entire nature of the Atman and the creative energy which is in Brahman. Knowing me, they understand the nature of the relative world and the individual man, and of God who presides over all action.
Now, there it is. God who presides over all action. The all-pervading God who constantly presides over the senses of all beings and governs all the elements. This is the scripture as passed along to us in the Chandi, in the Devi Mahatmya. So only one doer, only one presider over all the senses, and only one governing all the elements. The elements being those that he's speaking of, the elements as listed in Sankhya. Anything more? All right, Swayam, please read that again.
Knowing me, they understand the nature of the relative world and the individual man, and of God, who presides over all action. Even at the hour of death, it continued to know me thus. In that hour, their whole consciousness is made one with mine. And that's the end of chapter 7.
Okay, anything at all from anyone about what we've read in chapter 7, which is titled Knowledge and Experience? Because Sri Krishna says to Arjuna in the beginning, I will give you knowledge, but not just the knowledge, capital K knowledge, but the direct empirical experience, so that you may be sure that this knowledge is true. This is where we come by what is called in Sanskrit Shraddha. When we have both the knowledge from our own having dived deep within in contemplation, concentration, and meditation, we hear the voice within, this voice that speaks in silence, and we gain knowledge, therefore. But Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, if you seek me in this way, I will give you direct experience of who I am, who the Atman is, and who Brahman is. I will give you that direct experience. And this is an escalating series of steps that ends with what we call Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or in the word in Patanjali is the seedless Samadhi. Nothing more can grow from the consciousness that has had that, been in that state of seedless Samadhi. No further growth of the samskaras and karma. So anything at all from anyone about chapter 7 or any of the other chapters that we've read? Okay, knowledge and experience. So this is what we're seeking, because it's the experience that actually frees us. The knowledge can get us close. We can have savikalpa samadhi, the samadhi with seeds, that is to say, our previous experiences remain in our awareness and can be watered with our attention, even after savikalpa samadhi. But so, as I say, it's a step-by-step process. If it happened all at once, it would shatter our nervous systems. Anything at all from anyone about any of that? All right, dears. Well, let's go ahead with chapter 8 then.
Okay. Chapter 8, The Way to Eternal Brahman. Arjuna, tell me, Krishna, what Brahman is? What is the Atman, and what is the creative energy of Brahman? Explain the nature of this relative world and of the individual man. Who is God who presides over action in this body, and how does he dwell here? How are you revealed at the hour of death to those whose consciousness is united with you? Sri Krishna.
Now, wait just a moment here. Notice how Arjuna, in his question here, is asking for a recapitulation, a brief recapitulation of what Sri Krishna spoke of in chapter 7. He's enumerating these things, these points that Sri Krishna made and saying, explain to me more, tell me more, tell me what you mean by this. I hear your words, now tell me what you mean. So this is where Sri Krishna will head off now.
Sri Krishna, Brahman is that which is immutable and independent of any cause but itself. When we consider Brahman as lodged within the individual being, we call him the Atman.
Now, 2 points. First of all, in case the word immutable slipped by you, immutable means changeless, changeless. And the second point is when he refers to the Atman by the male gender, that's just a convention of speech, that Atman is genderless. There is no gender behind the screen. Gender is something of time, space, and causation, of duality. The Atman is something that is beyond that. Okay, so please read that again, dear.
Sri Krishna, Brahman is that which is immutable and independent of any cause but itself. When we consider Brahman as lodged within the individual being, we call him the Atman. The creative energy of Brahman is that which causes all existences to come into being. The nature of the relative world is mutability. The nature of the individual man is his consciousness of ego. I alone am God, who presides over action here in this body. At the hour of death, when a man leaves his body, he must depart with his consciousness absorbed in me. Then he will be united with me. Be certain of that. Whatever a man remembers at the last, when he is leaving the body, will be realized by him in the hereafter, because that will be what his mind has most constantly dwelt on during this life.
Okay, let's stop just a moment. This is again one of Sri Krishna's supreme promises. If you've been thinking of me, if you have been lodging your mind, however inexpertly and however inefficiently you may have been doing it because of the distractions of the relative world, if you that has been your constant wish and goal, that you come to know the living presence within you, then Sri Krishna says, at the hour of death, this will happen. But if you have been spending part of your time thinking about the divine and meditating on the divine, but another part of your time pursuing worldly goals like name, fame, wealth, and so on, this is what will come in the hereafter, both as a direct hereafterness, as Swami Vivekananda says. You will experience that in a heaven or hell, and then you will be reborn in a condition that allows you to realize what you have been desiring. So it's best to spend as much of our time as possible, according to Sri Krishna. This is not dogma. This is his suggestion and recommendation, that we spend as much time as we can thinking about and dwelling on the divine within. Any comments, concerns, or questions? Okay, please read that again, Swayam, and then read on.
At the hour of death, when a man leaves his body, he must depart with his consciousness absorbed in me. Then he will be united with me. Be certain of that. Whatever a man remembers at the last, when he is leaving the body, will be realized by him in the hereafter, because that will be what his mind has most constantly dwelt on during this life. Therefore, you must remember me at all times and do your duty. If your mind and heart are set upon me constantly, you will come to me. Never doubt this. Make a habit of practicing meditation and do not let your mind be distracted. In this way, you will come finally to the Lord, who is the light.
Make a habit of practicing meditation. Notice that he says, it is this turning within that is the solution to everything. So please read that line again, Swayam, about what to do.
Make a habit of practicing meditation and do not let your mind be distracted. In this way, you will come finally to the Lord, who is the light giver, the highest of the high. So, Brother Shankara, I have a question.
Yes, dear.
Again, we sort of discussed it more often, but one more time nonetheless. He says, do not let your mind be distracted. And, again, speaking for myself, it's easier said than done. It's the attempt. I try to bring it back. So when he says, do not let your mind be distracted, what exactly he's saying?
He's saying, make the self-effort to, when you notice that your mind is distracted, that your awareness, your attention is diverted to that which is not really worthy of your attention, that which does not really deserve your attention, then, as he said in an earlier line, you do your duty. Whatever is your duty, you do that. And that will involve some involvement and entanglement with distractions. But as soon as that is completed, rather than running off on a train of thought that gets started by what you've done, say you've been cooking. It is part of your duty to cook for yourself or for yourself and others. And so then you think, I really like that recipe that I saw on Facebook. I think I'll see if I can find out what cookbook that's in, and I'll get that cookbook, and then I'll see what other recipes are like that, and so your mind tracks off in this direction, and now you're thinking about food and cooking and so on and so forth. Is there anything inherently wrong with this? No, of course not. But it is, in time, you'll realize, well, this really doesn't deserve that much attention. If I saw that on Facebook, I'll go quickly to Facebook, find out what the cookbook is, order it, and then when it comes, then I'll take it up and see what's there. But you know how the mind works. We all know how the mind works. It'll track off in any number of trains of thought. one thing leads to another, to another, to another, to another. And so Sri Krishna is saying, don't let that happen. Pull your mind back when you notice that this is what's happening. Pull it back and restore your attention to that which truly deserves your attention, which is seeing the divine in everything, in all actions, in all beings. This is what Sri Krishna has said. So we make that attempt. And we definitely then, having done that, recognize that sense, that recognition of the divine in everywhere and everything comes from first our recognizing it within ourselves. And so we involve our thoughts with all of that. Does that make sense?
Yes, Brother Shankara. Thank you.
Well, I think it was a very pregnant question. This is what Sri Krishna means. And, it's just, he says, it's so hard not to be distracted by my Maya, he says. So hard to penetrate my Maya. We have to train our mind, train our mind, train our mind. Can it be done? He says, yes, Arjuna, it can be done. Arjuna says, I think the wind is no more restless than the mind. And Sri Krishna says, oh, that's true, but it can be controlled, Arjuna. You just have to try and try and try and try. And so, by the way, just one quick side note. Maria, I have put your question to Swami Sarvadevananda, and I have not received an answer. As soon as I receive an answer, you will hear from me. I didn't want to have the opportunity.
Shanta.
Okay. All right. So, anything else from anyone before Swayam reads on? All right, dears, we have plenty of time left. Let's move on.
Okay. He is all-knowing God, Lord of the emperors.
Read into that, would you please?
Okay.
Know who we're talking about?
Okay. Make a habit of practicing meditation and do not let your mind be distracted. In this way, you will come finally to the Lord, who is the light giver, the highest of the high. He is all-knowing God, Lord of the emperors, ageless, subtler far than mind's inmost subtlety, universal sustainer, shining sun-like, self-luminous. What fashion his form has, who shall conceive of it? He dwells beyond delusion, the dark of Maya. On him let man meditate, always, for then, at the last hour of going hence from his body, he will be strong in the strength of this yoga faithfully followed. The mind is firm and the heart so full it hardly holds its love.
Now, this is a gift of the divine. We practice, but this that was just described, this fullness of the heart, this completeness, this purna, fullness, is a gift of the divine. And it's not something that we earn or merit. It's something that simply happens. And it's not likely to happen unless we practice, but it almost certainly will not happen if we don't practice. And it seems to be more likely to happen if we do practice. But as Holy Mother said, the Lord cannot be purchased by your self-effort. There's no purchase price for his love, his affection, and his grace. So this is something that is, and it is one of the aspects of the great mystery. How we as individual beings are both that divine that can give it to ourself in the very real sense, but somehow we withhold it from ourselves because of a sense of unworthiness. And it's a very peculiar thing. But all of the saints, if you read the book Love Poems from God about these 12 saints and their testimony, you'll see that they all talk about this time in which they did not accept the Lord's invitation to an intimate relationship because of a sense of unworthiness in one way or another. So this is something that, again, that sense of unworthiness is finally dispelled by the divine presence itself. And just exactly how and why cannot be explained. Any comments, concerns, or questions about any of that?
I was just going to back up to the thing about, where it talks about keeping your eyes and mind towards God and not being distracted. And it's like, a lot of the greats, just like Gandhi when he died, he's Ram, 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 Ram. They kept that mantra going and the name of God going all the time.
Yes, so that as he was passing from this body, he was fastening his mind to his chosen ideal, which is Ram or Rama. And so that's an excellent choice of example, Glenn. Very good choice of example.
Now, I know we're not supposed to tell anyone our mantra, but I'm thinking on the day we're leaving our body, if we know this is it, would it be okay to repeat it aloud?
Of course it would.
Yeah, I think that's the one time where you can get away with it.
Oh, shout it aloud if you wish. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Brahmadas. Yes. Well, the reason you don't tell other people your mantra is none of their business. It's none of your business what your chosen ideal is. If you choose to share with them what your chosen ideal is without the mantra, an educated person will be able to guess what your mantra is. But it's none of their concern, none of their business, and you only take a little of its luster and power away when you share it with someone who doesn't really understand or care about it that much, and whose concern it is not. And so you're absolutely right. You should not. But if you know you're leaving the body, that is the time to to say your mantra aloud, so that you're having that feedback, that oral feedback.
I have a question. It's always good to be, repeating your mantras or your Ishta Devata, but there seems to be some principles or thinking around that you should specifically intensify that activity, especially when you're at your deathbed or around that time. And is there any specific reason, scriptural or something, that tells you why that should be, or is it?
Well, we just heard it. We just heard it, Bhaskar. That will keep your mind fastened to, focused on your chosen ideal and the form of the divine that has been dear to your heart, which is as you practice a mantra for decades, that form of the divine that is at the heart of your mantra becomes very dear to you indeed. How this happens, there's no way of explaining it. It's really a gift of grace. And so Krishna says, if you're doing this if you're keeping your mind fastened on the divine being, the Lord, as he calls it, in this instance, on your deathbed, well, this chanting of the mantra is a very good way to do that, as Brahmadas pointed out. So does that answer your question?
So that means the scriptural source of doing this at your deathbed is the Gita, as we are reading it.
No, it goes back to the Upanishads.
It goes back.
goes
Okay.
far farther back, and it's part of the yogic tradition for millennia. Just how long, I couldn't say, but this idea of what it is that we're focused on as we're leaving the body, very old idea, and it's very definitely in the Upanishads. It's part of the conversation that Uddalaka has with his son, whose name is escaping me right now, that ends with him saying, "Thou art that, my son, thou art that." But it's part of that. That's at least one place that it appears in the Upanishads, because his son asks about that particular aspect, among dozens of other things. There's a long conversation in the Chandogya between Uddalaka and his son, whatever his name is. Anybody know? Anybody remember? Anyway, so it's very old, Bhaskar.
Thank you.
But it certainly is recommended by all the modern saints as well, as even Nisargadatta Maharaj says, do that. And, is one of his statements that it has to do with bhakti. He says, repeat the name of the Lord. Keep your mind fixed on that. And he says, everything yields to earnestness. If you earnestly seek the divine presence, it will be granted to you. This is what Sri Krishna just got through telling us, just how it happens, why it happens, and why earnestness, which is an aspect of Shraddha, again, you can't purchase this by your earnestness or by your practice, but without that earnestness and that yearning and that practice, it seems unlikely to happen.
Uddalaka's son is Swetaketu, Brother Shankara.
Swetaketu, thank you. Thank you, dear. Swetaketu. Uddalaka has this long conversation with his son Swetaketu that culminates in him saying, thou art that, Swetaketu. Thou art that, my son. Saying that because Swetaketu has been inquiring into the nature of Brahman and goes through the whole series of syllogisms, including, is Brahman this, is Brahman that, is Brahman? And Uddalaka explains why, yes, Brahman is and is not that at the same time. Finally coming to this statement that there is only one summary statement that can say it about another person, and that is Tattvamasi, that thou art.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I think that aging is actually kind of grace. It's a gift, because I come to realize that this quest for knowledge, particularly of worldly things, is just futile. And even just seeking knowledge about, of course, spiritual scriptures is very appealing and soothing and necessary, but I'm trying too hard to express this, but that itself turns mind to the mantra or the god at some point. Okay, I just can't get it. And then the mind
Well, this
allows you to go inside.
this is why Sri Ramakrishna says at some point, enough with the books, enough with the reasoning. Just do the practice. Just follow the instructions. And so, yes, you're absolutely right, Swayam. And your use of the word soothing is a very apt use of that word. This quest after knowledge, which, as we heard in the previous chapter, is one of the four noble ways of seeking the divine. It's done because it soothes the mind. It gives the mind something satisfactory to deal with, to chew on, to be with. But it is not the thing itself. It is not the thing itself. The thing itself cannot be known by the mind. Cannot be known by the mind. Why? The nature of the thing itself is infinite. The mind, by its nature, is finite. So there is, as Swami Prabhavananda said, there is no way for the finite mind to know the infinite. He said it is like trying to empty the ocean of consciousness with a teaspoon. And that's going to take you a very long time. So it is you use the word futile, Swayam. Yes, indeed, it is futile.
Plus, it's probably expanding faster than you're scooping it out.
Yes, exactly. Very well said, Clint. Its creative energy is expanding it faster than you can possibly scoop it out. So yes, the creative energy of Brahman is, even in astrophysics, we hear that the universe is constantly expanding. And it is a great puzzlement to the astrophysicists as to why this is so and how it is so. They have these categories called dark energy and dark matter that explain aspects of it, but they're just categories, they're just gestures towards some sort of truth that they don't understand. So bless them. May they sometime realize that they're trying to empty the ocean of consciousness with a teaspoon. In the meantime, bless them. May they be soothed and enjoy themselves. May they feel accomplishment. We know when we know. We don't know until we know. And there's simply no way of judging others for their pursuits unless it is inimical to society, in which case we have laws to deal with that. But otherwise, no judgment. Even if we see someone is missing the mark, as the Christians say, abominate the missing the mark, abominate the sin, love the sinner. Well, I certainly rambled off on a side tangent there. So anything else from anyone before we move on, or is there any time left?
For 10 minutes?
Oh, well, we have 10 minutes. That's good. Okay, anything more from anyone before we read on? And please don't hesitate to speak up if there is something you'd like to share. This is, after all, a class. Okay, please read on, dear.
I'm just going to repeat the last few
Oh,
verses.
please do, dear.
What fashion his form has, who shall conceive of it? He dwells beyond delusion, the dark of Maya. On him let man meditate always. For then, at the last hour of going hence from his body, he will be strong in the strength of this yoga, faithfully followed. The mind is firm, and the heart so full it hardly holds its love. Thus he will take his leave, and now, with the life force indrawn utterly, held fast between the eyebrows, he goes forth to find his Lord, that light giver, who is greatest. Now I will tell you briefly about the nature of him who is called the deathless by those seers who truly understand the Vedas. Devotees enter into him when the bonds of their desire are broken. To reach this goal, they practice control of the passions. When a man leaves his body and departs, and there is a notation at the end of the departs with some footnotes. Shall I read that first?
Please, please, please.
Okay. According to yoga technique, the yogi must employ a special method of leaving the body at death. First, the vital force is drawn up the sushumna, the central spinal passage, and gathered in the brain between the eyebrows. The yogi then leaves the body through an aperture in the center of the brain called Sahasrara. That was for the departs, when a man leaves his body and departs.
Okay, let me tell you of an experience where this was actually witnessed. For the last approximately 18 months of his life, which ended at his age 78, a man named John Schlink lived with us here in the center, lived in the monastery. He was not a monk, but he had lived in the monastery of the Vedanta Society of New York, the West Side Center, for 53 years before he moved here. 53 years. He moved there, moved into that monastery at the request of Swami Pavitrananda, who was a disciple of Swami Brahmananda, Raja Maharaj, the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. So Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Pavitrananda, John Schlink. John Schlink, as I said, lived for 53 years in that monastery, lived as a monk, though the Swami never asked him to take vows. John lived as a monk. He moved here, as I said, for the last approximately 18 months of his life. He had a massive stroke one evening in January of 2015. Cindy Craven, one of the devotees here, discovered him in this condition and called 911. 911 came and got him and took him to the trauma unit of Grady Hospital downtown. After some time, Cindy and I were allowed to go and sit with John. We had to prove that it was, anyway, we just had to prove something before we were allowed to do this. The two attending physicians that we saw separately, a woman and a man, these were trauma unit physicians, said they had never seen such a massive hemorrhage and that it was totally unrecoverable and so on. So Cindy and I were sitting there with John, and it was after 11:30 at night. His stroke, his massive hemorrhage, happened at approximately 7:30 that evening. So we're sitting there, holding his hand, stroking his arm, and I'm reading the Gita to him, reading what Sri Krishna says in chapter 2 about the nature of the body and leaving the body and so on. And at 11:45, I know because I was facing the wall on which there was a big clock. At exactly 11:45, a tremor started at John's feet and traveled up his body all the way to his shoulders and head. And then you could tell that whatever it was that was coming up the body in that tremor left. You could tell, boom, it was gone. There was nothing left of John Schlink. There was nothing left of anything but an inert thing being kept breathing by the machines. John Schlink had done exactly what Sri Krishna and Swami Prabhavananda in this footnote described. So, so Cindy and I both witnessed it. You can talk to Cindy about it if you'd like as well. So I'd like Swayam to read that footnote again. And then if there are any comments or concerns or questions, we'll take those up.
Okay. When a man leaves his body and departs, he must close all the doors of the senses. Should I read that footnote again?
Please read the footnote here.
Okay. According to yoga technique, the yogi must employ a special method of leaving the body at death. First, the vital force is drawn up the sushumna, the central spinal passage, and gathered in the brain between the eyebrows. The yogi then leaves the body through an aperture in the center of the brain called the Sahasrara. That's the end of the footnote for that.
Yes. So is there any comment, any concern, any question, anything that you would like to share from your own wisdom or experience? I shared an experience. If anyone else has witnessed a death that showed these similar signs or anything else of the kind, please share that with us. Or is there any concern or question that any of this raises that you would like to have clarified?
So, Brother Shankara, this is possible only by the yogi to do voluntary?
No. This is a yogic technique. You will be able to do it, dear, if you continue practicing to the point of death. You will be able to do this. Furthermore, we are told that those of us who have taken Sri Ramakrishna's grace through his initiation, he will be there to lead us in this and guide us in doing this. This is what we're told by the Swamis. If you have any question, ask Swami Sarvadevananda when he's here. But he repeats that to his initiates.
In some traditions, they take like a little wheat straw and they stick it in the hole where it sticks out the top of the head where they left to signify that is what has happened.
Is that so? I never heard that before.
That's
Interesting.
in Tibetan Buddhism. It's called
Well,
Tung Tung.
wouldn't you know it would be the Tibetan Buddhism? But
Yeah.
that goes back to Bon. That's pre-Buddhism. That's not a Buddhist practice. That's a Bon practice.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that they have an active practice of that today.
Well, I'm not surprised. Anyone
Thank you,
else?
Brother Shankara, for
Yes, Shailesh.
thank you for sharing John Slink's passing away. That was wonderful. I have read about it, but first-hand experience, what you described is, it's, I don't know what's the word. It's mystical, amazing.
And every word that I have passed along is as accurate as I can make it. That's precisely what happened as it was experienced. And it was truly, as you say,
It's inspiring too, that whatever is written in the documents, the scriptures, it happens. And I have read about it and someone narrated it to me, but this is amazing.
Yes.
I knew John Slink. He was way up there.
And we have other examples in the scriptures. There are descriptions in the great master of people who were disciples of Sri Ramakrishna and what happened to them at the moment of death. There is even an example in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna of a man who completely accidentally mentioned Ram. He was talking to his son, but he said Ram, Ram, and then died, and was carried away into the arms of Rama. This story is told by Sri Ramakrishna as an amusing anecdote. So there's every reason, if the avatars such as Sri Krishna and Sri Ramakrishna and their the faces of the eternal teacher, such as Swami Prabhavananda, affirm it, we may believe it. It isn't that we have to have utter conviction in it until we know it, but we may believe it and hold it in as an article of faith and belief to motivate us toward our practice, so that we will be in that condition when we come to the moment of death. Anything else from anyone?
I'd like to share something.
Please, Robert.
That relates to what Cheyenne was talking about earlier about the books. And I've experienced the same thing. We already have all of the knowledge.
Yes.
Within our souls.
Yes.
And we are the ones that are preventing ourselves from having it.
Yes.
A realization of it.
Yes.
And I find, I'll give you an example of it. Like you see in a lot of the books that in order to concentrate, to look at the tip of your nose. You know,
yes.
To concentrate on the tip of your nose. If you concentrate on the tip of your nose, the only thing you're going to get is a headache out of that. You see, I've discovered, close your eyes and concentrate on the tip of your nose. Now, this is a whole different thing now.
Yeah.
And what you see is nothing.
Yes, no thing.
Oh, avoid, no thing. But if you keep doing it, and you do it long enough, two things are happening. One thing, your mind stops running around like the monkey. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because if you're trying to see something that's not there, that intrigues the mind. It grabs it. And it allows it can't run around. And if you're persistent with it, eventually you will see exactly what the book said you will see. And what will happen is you will actually then be concentrated. Because when we try to concentrate, we don't know how to do that.
Well, that's why this technique is there, and thank you so much, as
Yes.
always, Robert, for sharing, because
Yes.
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yes, if you do it with your eyes open, you'll get a headache. You're right. No, it must be done with your eyes closed. And later, once you're accomplished at it, you can do it with your eyes open, but then you're just doing it for fun. Then you're just having this little dance, this do-si-do with the divine. Oh, thank you, Robert, as always. Anything more?
Yeah, just a
Uh,
quick observation that when many of the accomplished yogis are ready to kind of kick their body or they often get into the lotus posture and probably doing exactly what that footnote 1 says. They're probably practicing that to make the final exit.
I think you're right, Bhaskar, but it is not necessary at all. Both Swami Vivekananda and Swami Prabhavananda left the body in full consciousness, very deliberately. Swami Vivekananda on July 4th, 1902, and Swami Prabhavananda on July 4th, 1976. And the testimony of Swami Vivekananda's fellow monks is that he was lying down. He was not sitting in any special posture. He was lying down, and that was certainly true of Swami Prabhavananda also. I know that about Swami Prabhavananda because the monks and nuns who were there told me that. They called me at 2:00 in the morning to tell me that the Swami had left the body. And if I wanted to come and take his darshan, I should come right away. So this is, it is, as you said, Bhaskar, they're no doubt practicing, making it easy for the energy to rush up the Shushumna to the Sahasrara and out the top of the head. But apparently it's not necessary for the accomplished yogi either.
I actually get that anecdote from the autobiography of Yogi.
Yes.
Paramahansa Yogananda, when he took his Mahasamadhi, he was seated in lotus, and
Yes.
that's how it came. But I'm also wondering, why would they call that last piece Mahasamadhi? And maybe it's a question for our Saturday class, which is when we're doing the Yoga Sutras.
Well, Maha means great. Maha simply means great, beyond all description great. So it is, they call it Maha Samadhi because it is a form of samadhi. It is a form of becoming conscious beyond time, space, and causation. And it is great beyond any description. And this is one of the reasons that they use the word Maha, because there's no sense trying to describe it. It can't be described. Thank you, Bhaskar, as always.
It doesn't really say, but I always, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, I can't remember the guy's name, but he made his final offering to God and he lit himself on fire on the funeral pyre. And, I would just have to assume that he left his body.
Well, I don't remember that anecdote.
Well, no, there was a story about some a sadhu, and he lived somewhere in one of the cities, and it was kind of like underground, and they just smelt smoke and flesh burning coming out of there, and he had offered his body as final sacrifice.
Well, okay. If you want to find that page, or so
Okay.
other people can read it and post it in chat, we can. But I don't want to pursue that, Glenn. I can't comment on it at all. Anything else from anyone? And thank you, Glenna, as always. You have good insights. But just this one can't be followed because I don't know anything about it. All right, dears. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace and thy blessed beneficence be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Hari Om Tat Sat. Beloved Lord, make it so. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the secure knowledge that we are in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dearly beloved, make it so. Any final thought from anyone? All right. Well, until Saturday then, when we'll take up the Yoga Sutras.
How to know God.
Hmm?
How to know God, right?
How to Know God, yes. The book How to Know God. But it's Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And then on Sunday, there's no 11 a.m. talk on Sunday. Swami Sarvadevananda will speak on mantra, guru, and so on in the chapel at 8 p.m. that evening. 8 p.m. the 14th, Swami Sarvadevananda in the chapel and on Zoom. So if you can't, but any of you who are planning to take initiation the next morning, please do either on Zoom or in person, preferably in person, attend that talk by Swami Sarvadevananda. So that's the next couple of things coming up, and then of course we'll be into the next week. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. A great good night to you, and may we all be well and in bright spirits. Much love to everyone. So glad to gather together with you this way to study together the art of spirituality. Good night.